Our top focus remains on the escalating diplomatic row between the United States and South Sudan, the world's youngest nation. In the latest developments, Juba has accepted a DRC national deported by the United States, whose deportation sparked Washington to revoke all visas with South Sudanese citizens. South Sudan, in a statement shared on social media, said it would now allow the DR Congo citizen to enter after previously denying him entry. Now this to maintain friendly relations between the countries. Earlier on Monday, South Sudan criticized Washington for unfairly revoking all visas for its citizens. This was after the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, accused Juba of failing to accept the return of its citizens deported from the United States. South Sudan's foreign ministry also said that the DR Congo deportee, who was denied entry last Friday, had been returned to the US with all supporting evidence.
The government deeply regrets that despite this history of collaboration and partnership, South Sudan now faces a broad revocation of visas based on an isolated incident involving misrepresentation by an individual who is not a South Sudanese national. Comprehensive verification processes confirmed that this individual is a national of the Democratic Republic of Congo named Makula Kintu. In accordance with our immigration protocols, he was not admitted and was subsequently returned to the sending country for further processing.
Meanwhile, Juba has also called on Washington to engage in constructive dialogue to resolve the dispute. As a gesture of goodwill, South Sudan has instructed its embassy in the US to issue emergency travel documents for 21 of the 23 individuals identified by the US officials for repatriation. This comes as Washington's decision to curb all visas has left many South Sudanese in shock, particularly those with family members in the United States.
This statement, all of us were shocked because many of South Sudanese, they have their families in America. Also, some of them, they are here in South Sudan. So they used to go and come back. So if there's the issue like this, I think that is going to affect many people in South Sudan.
South Sudanese in the US were granted Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, under the Obama administration in 2011 on the grounds that the country was unsafe because of fighting that started after it declared independence from Sudan. The designation was extended by the Biden administration. TPS for South Sudanese was set to expire by the 3rd of May. Since Trump returned to the White House, his administration has begun to overturn TPS designations for a handful of countries, including Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Trump has also begun deporting illegal immigrants, including from Africa. Last month, South Sudan was placed on a draft list of countries which could face restrictions on tourist, student, and some immigrant visas. It is also facing the brunt of Trump's baseline 10% tariff on exports to the U.S. Now, the revocation of visas by the U.S. has also sparked strong reactions in South Sudan, with the information minister accusing Washington of exploiting the nation's tense internal situation. South Sudan has long faced instability, with clashes threatening a peace agreement that ended a 5-year civil war in 2018. Tensions have flared in recent weeks, particularly after President Salva Kiir's government placed First Vice President Riek Machar under house arrest. The U.S. has already ordered its non-emergency staff to leave South Sudan, while it has repeatedly urged the government to de-escalate the tensions. But will this new diplomatic dispute over deportation further strain the relations between the two countries? Now, to discuss more on this, we have with us Dr. Remember Miamingi, who is a South Sudan analyst, joining us live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Thank you for being with us, Doctor.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
How significant is the diplomatic fallout from the US visa ban on all South Sudan's nationals. And what are the potential long-term implications for US-South Sudan relations?
No, thank you very much. This is very unfortunate and, in my opinion, ill-informed decision on the side of the American government has significant political, social, and economic implication in the short, medium, and long term for South Sudan. First, of course, it will deepen the mistrust that had existed between the government of South Sudan and the US, now to involve even the people of South Sudan who the US had occupied such a deep place in their heart for the work that the government of the US did for South Sudan during their liberation wars. And that goodwill in the heart of South Sudanese, of course, will continue to be affected. In addition, it will also have significant, staggering human cost, right? Imagine that a South Sudanese woman who just walked into a CS, legal resident of the US, emerging from there, an lawful actor in that country. And that is not just that, they're students, they're sports people, they are families that live in the US and in South Sudan, whose actions did not in any way contribute to where their government has placed them. And finally, I think, is the fact that you have citizens that run away from their country because they suffered from collective punishment through repression, through war, and sought refuge in the US, only to be subjected to the same collective punishment because of the act of the government that punished them in the first place. And now ready to send them back. If the TPS and all these other visas has taken effect, it means human rights activists, defenders, civil society actors who have operated in the US will find themselves on the plane back to Juba. And that is really, really troubling.
Right. And Dr., given South Sudan's claim that the deportee in question was actually a Congolese national, what legal or diplomatic avenues are available for South Sudan to contest and to potentially reverse the visa ban?
South Sudan had a number of diplomatic tools under international law and diplomatic practices that it would have used to be able to resolve this. But that will mean that South Sudan is dealing with a partner on the other side who operates on the basis of an international system that is rule-based, that respects international law, diplomatic niceties, practice, and principles, that they could have contested it. But I do not think the US is in that place now. That's number one. Number two, by capitulating in accepting someone that the government has clearly stated was not a citizen, that significantly and dramatically narrows any possibility of the government of South Sudan to contest this either through multilateral institutions, the regional institutions like the African Union, friendly nations, that has weakened because it had already, and you can't blame South Sudan because you're dealing with a very powerful bully.
And how might this incident affect the broader perception of US immigration and foreign policy in Africa, especially when actions are taken based on what South Sudan describes as misidentification?
No, of course, for some time already, we've seen a growing perception among and across Africa of the impression that there is a government in the United States now that is not bound by justice, by mutual respect, but that is bent on exercising raw power often arbitrary, unilaterally, and disconnected from the reality on the ground. This government, of course, for it, might is right, and the weak, including African states, and many of them, are treated less as sovereigns, equals, and more as dispensable actors, in this unfolding food chain of international relations. And in that, what you are going to see is, as Africans feel precariously less equal and respected, and vulnerable, and cannot operate within the basis of international law and rule base, it opens up African states and this continent to alternative global alliances, where Africans and African states feel they are treated as partners and treated equally, and not rendered vulnerable and maybe protected against strong powers. So US influence will decline. Alternative global alliances influence on the continent will increase, and the relationship, of course, between those countries will suffer significantly.
Absolutely. Doctor, thank you very much for being with us on First Post Africa and for your valued insights and analysis there.
Thank you very much for having me.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.